Okay, here, my fingers are not quite done doing the walking on the keyboard here. Let me finish this up real quick here. This hour we're going to talk to Donald Jeffries, one of our most brilliant authors. He has put together books that are just, geopolitically speaking, as spot on as they get. His newest book is called Bullyocracy. Great name, great subject, indispensable subject in this time. I've never seen more bullyism from cradle to grave than I'm seeing right now. It's really something to watch. I do suspect again, and I'll repeat this because there was a story on CNN, Fox. Actually, it came out of the Hill. Let me get this. I got to do this real quick. Now, as I think most of you know, I've been saying for a couple of months, don't be shocked if Donald Trump decides not to run for re-election. The polls are kicking his butt. It's obscene. And knowing the man as we all do, we know what a child he is. We know about his narcissism. We know about his weaknesses. We know he wants to please everybody, or at least he used to. And now the polls, be they legitimate or otherwise, are almost uniformly suggesting that a senile, demented, pedophile pervert is beating the Donald by 10 to 15 points. Now, I know it's early, but it's only 6 weeks to the convention, so it's not that early. How would Donald's ego, how would his psyche absorb getting beaten by a man who ought to be in Shady Acres for the rest of his morbid life? Joe the Creeper Biden. Trump couldn't take it. He probably would never even want to play golf. He'd just sit there and be morose for the next year or two, or worse. I don't think he can take it. And if the polls continue to look that bad as we go through the next 5-6 weeks, don't be surprised if you're looking at a ticket that says Pence-Haley against Hillary-Buttigieg. They can't run Biden. It would be political obscenity, the likes of which have never been duplicated on the presidential platform that I can remember in our history. But Donald Jeffries, what do you think about all this? Welcome back.
How you doing, Jeff? Well, I gave up political predictions when Trump was elected because I didn't see that happening. I don't think anybody did.
He was selected. You were right. They gave it to him. They gave it to him.
And I think that all presidents are selected. Maybe the last president that was elected in a very close race, a disputed race, was JFK.
That's
for
right.
Sure. Anyhow, and so many things ended when they assassinated him. But I think that it's hard to tell where Trump, we talked about this so much, I still think Trump is an actor. But it's possible that, certainly if he's an actor, he's very convincing because he does convincingly portray this man-child, Baby Huey type of figure that is just impossibly, impossibly arrogant, impossibly childish, egotist. I mean, the other day when he was talking about, they told me you're the most perfect person. I mean, he was saying that the other day, and it's like nobody else says those things. So maybe he really is that way. I don't know, but I don't know that the evidence that he was quite this over the top was there. I didn't watch his ridiculous reality show. I didn't pay that much attention to him. So I don't know if.
No.
Yeah, so I don't know. It'd be interesting to watch and see if you could spot that in those kind of shows. But, it may have just taken his natural personality and taken it over the top. But certainly he has divided the country, and I think that was his assignment. What happens next? I mean, I have no idea because no matter who gets in, you announce those. I mean, we're thinking Trump versus Biden is awful, obviously, but Pence versus Hillary with horrible vice presidential candidates like Nikki Haley and Pete Buttigieg wouldn't be a whole lot better. I mean, they may not have Alzheimer's or whatever, but it's another sterling cast of choices for it. But the American people, they're the only thing some of them are pro-choice on is abortion because they've proven they don't like choices. Clearly, they don't even want a third. As my friend Cindy Sheehan says online all the time, we don't need a third party, we need a second party. And that's the thing. We don't have any choice, and
Right.
we really should have multiple parties now, especially with the country so divided, so that people could maybe get off this cultural divide. And of course, you're seeing the way it is now with the. I was watching Tucker Carlson. I think is still the only halfway decent
He's the only
mainstream.
one. There's
Yeah,
nobody else. No, he's the only one.
And so he does. I mean, a lot of times he's just repeating stuff I've been saying on Facebook all day.
Isn't it funny how when you look at the mainstream media in its totality, or give it at least a cursory glance in that regard, Tucker Carlson just stands out as the only honest man among them. Really. He's speaking. If he's, I don't know who's writing his commentaries. I'm sure he writes most of them. But the guy's telling the truth. He's closer to it than we're going to find anywhere else. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, and I think he has a lot of parallels between him and Pat Buchanan, because Pat Buchanan was kind of who drifted towards populism and really became a populist, although he never. And I used to say, just show your inner populist, Pat. Stop going back to Nixon and the Republicans who hate you. But he never could quite do that. And I suspect Tucker Carlson might have the same kind of thing, where he's still, for instance, he rejects any notion of conspiracies at all. So he wouldn't be friendly to that.
I think he has to do that. I want to give him that much. I really think he has to stay away from that for a number of reasons. But that's just me.
Yeah, and I think that's obviously, and I'm amazed he's still on air, but he was showing some stories, and the latest
a token
one,
honest man. We got to have a token. He's a token honest man. So yeah,
we have to. And again, I hate talking about white this and white that. I really don't want to talk about it, but when I'm looking at my feed every day on social media and look at this stuff, it's everything that comes across is some new outrage, and I hold myself back from publishing. But I saw this comment, and I don't know what her name is, but she's a Washington Post editor that came out and
the black woman. Yeah.
Blasted white women, and again, not some white women. This is what I say. People like me, who I was a good liberal Democrat, as a young guy, and. Yeah. I learned that it's wrong to generalize about a whole group of people, because it's mainly about black people. You can't say black people are lazy, black people are stupid. The kind of generalities they would have, older white people would say back then. It's wrong to stereotype, right? So, I had that ingrained in me. So I don't understand why now it's acceptable, because when they say white people, or in this case, white women, they didn't say, just some or whatever. She just said, white women are lucky that we're only calling you nasty names instead of getting revenge. Now, I don't know what apparently revenge. She mentioned
I know what revenge means.
Revenge
revenge means guillotine revenge. I'm telling you, that's what they're all thinking. We got to kill the whites.
She was bringing up preposterous things like Emmett Till, tragic examples from the past that no white woman today had anything to do with. And, maybe one or whatever in that case, any white woman that did falsely accuse a black or whatever is long gone or very old. And that's, again, it's an individual thing. But you're smearing all white women for it. And, it's almost like a blood libel. For centuries it was the Jews killed Christ and that we heard. And modern Jews had to wear that. And I always thought that, although I think, I think that kind of, this, sins, and we were told, and I think probably because there were so many prominent Jews that were, scared of this, they were told, the sins of the father can't be visited upon the son. And that's a reasonable thing. I mean, do we want to be held accountable for something? I mean, who knows, as far back, any of us could have had a great-great-great-grandfather who did some horrible things. But are we going to be held accountable for it? And this entire movement, what we're seeing today, is the sins of the father are being visited upon the sons and the daughters. And not only that, but they're not the daughters and sons, most of us, to be visited upon us, because our forefathers did nothing. 3 to 5% of people at the peak had slaves, of white people. So obviously,
I know it's such a contrived misdirection crap. It just makes me sick to watch them getting away with this.
And the entire thing. So it's like it's been ramped up on steroids. These entire protests are built around the concept that all white people today, and Tucker Carlson's been talking about this too. This hideous book But Bullyocracy is trotting along. My latest book doing as well as it can. My conspiracy books do okay, but there's this new book called White Fragility, which is written by some woman, is the #1 book in America, and this is a hideous book.
White Fragility.
White Fragility, and it basically preaches, and this is the new gospel now, that all whites. You talk about it's like original sin, that a white baby is born racist, born supremacist.
I'm telling you.
Have that, and this is what they're preaching.
They want us dead. They want those radical communist Bolsheviks. That's what they are. They want us dead. Please take that seriously.
It's hideous, and this book is going to be, assuming schools ever open back up again, is going to be in the curriculum of schools. So they're going to be brainwashed.
Who wrote this? Who wrote the book? A white?
Yes, of course, a white, of course. D'Angelo, I think Beverly D'Angelo
communist
or something.
Another communist.
Well, she's
mass murderer type mentality.
A lunatic, and a lunatic whose heart is full of hate. And so I don't understand this, and it's frightening now. Being a writer, I'm aware that they can manipulate these things, and so it's possible. Corporate America is buying chunks and bulks of these books so it'll go up in the ratings and they can claim it's #1. So I don't know how many people are actually buying it. I hope that's the case, but at any rate,
the book is titled again, please. I'm not going to buy it. I just want to remember it. White Fragility.
White Fragility.
Very clever title. Very evil book. Have you read much of it?
No, I haven't. I'm going by what Tucker Carlson and other people have said about it, but I've heard
when did he make that statement? Last night? Or last Friday?
I think it was middle of last week. He was talking about it.
If you can find that, send me a link, will you? I want to send. I can't watch Tucker every time, but I'd like to see. I'll run it.
Yeah, and it's so again, I hate talking about this stuff all the time, but we have to, because we're headed down.
Well, let me say one thing to augment what you're saying. I hope all of you understand that this book didn't just accidentally get published. This is part of the process. It's A to Z. It's dusk till dawn, and then dawn till whenever. Hell freezes over. They're not going to stop with this. It's mass mind control, social engineering, and manipulation, and they are setting us up for hell on earth. Please understand that. Don't make the mistake of not getting it. I know all of you listening get it. And it's going to be real frustrating for a lot of you who are going to try to help those who really deserve to know, but who are blocked. They can't see it. They've been blinded. They've got blocks, social blocks, guilt blocks, whatever blocks. And you want to get through to help them. It's so frustrating. Go on.
Yeah, no, it really is. And it's bothering me more and more because, again, I when I hear whites this, white that, I can understand now.
We're in trouble.
How blacks felt, 50, 60 years ago when it was blacks this and blacks that. And, it's wrong either way to be judging everybody by the perceived actions of a few. I'm sick of hearing about it. And when they castigate all whites, I have a white wife. I have white children. I hope to have grandchildren one day who probably will be white. I have white brothers and sisters. I had white parents. I have a huge white family. They're virtually all white. So when you talk about this, you're talking about the people that I love.
People, European whites built this whole damn country, which those people are so miserable in, allegedly, and have been so abused in, although slavery ended 175 years ago or whenever. Look, why don't they all the ones who are unhappy, I'm talking about African Americans here. If you really don't like this country and you hate whites that much, go home. Ghana has invited all of you to come home to Africa. You are all welcome to go there. And maybe some senator will make a stipend available to all American blacks who hate this country and whites so much that they want to go home. And that's fine. There's nothing racist about that. Go home. You don't have to stay. You don't have to.
The most astounding thing about this, though, Jeff, is that this is being driven almost exclusively by white people. I was astonished to find the other day that
communist whites are the biggest, most evil stealth issue we've got to face. You're right.
Well, I mean, because the Black Lives Matter movement, now you would think it'd be overwhelmingly black. Apparently, only 17% of Black Lives Matters is black. I mean, that's astonishing.
Right.
So, I mean,
Right.
who is
Now
trying?
they're duping Generation Z. They're duping these idiot kids, 25 and under.
No, and you hear, it's so stupid. I mean, between watching the people scurrying around in their masks and doing the social distancing and hearing white person after white person talk about white privilege and white supremacy, it's like, you do realize you're white, right? I mean, so what are you giving up? Walk the walk. Be like Thaddeus Stevens. Thaddeus Stevens back in the old days, I wouldn't have liked his politics. But the guy, bless him, in the 1860s, he walked around openly in D.C. with a black mistress. And when he died, he requested to be buried in a black cemetery because he said, I want to continue my, in the eternity of what I've preached in life. Right. I respect that. He walked the walk. So if any of these guys, Mark Cuban, any of these white billionaires who, who are talking about
Mark
Black
Cuban
Lives
is
Matter,
a Jewish American. Okay, let's remember that. And we're talking about Zionist, possibly dual citizen, possibly oriented toward Bolshevism, okay?
And perhaps
playing
the presidential candidate down the road, because they're trying to build up. But when somebody like him talks about that, and it doesn't matter, what it is. If he says it, okay, I would respect you if you say, I'm just giving now don't sell your team either, because that would be racist to take advantage of a black person. Give the team to a black person. Give your fortune away to people of color. And then I'll respect you, and then go work a menial job because you had you really benefited from white privilege, Mr. Cuban. So somebody like that, I would respect that they didn't. Of course, none of these people are doing that. They're not giving up anything. They're just, I don't even know what they're doing. They're virtue signaling. It's empty virtue signaling. They're lecturing people. And I was arguing with someone today, but what's very telling about this, and where you do have kind of something you used to hear from the classical Bolshevik line about the petty bourgeois, is it's the middle class. They hate the middle class. It's almost gone. There's almost no middle class left. You Correct. Don't hear them lecturing. They're not lecturing the elite. They're not talking about the 1% that has stolen all the wealth and gotten rid. What? They're the ones who should be that have their wrath. Instead, they're when they talk about white privilege and white supremacy, it's for people like us who don't have any privilege, certainly aren't supremacists. They don't go to the Jeff Bezos of the world or the Bill Gates of the world. They don't talk to them. They never mention them. Why don't they mention them? Why don't they talk about how Jeff Bezos at Amazon treats his warehouse workers, who I imagine there's quite a few of them are black, where he pays them almost nothing and gave them a couple pieces of chocolate a few years ago as a Christmas bonus. Talk about that. That's privilege right there. When you have 100 billion or whatever he has, and the most you can give your workers is a couple pieces of chocolate. But that doesn't work on the divide, and the whole thing's about the divide. They want to divide between, and that's why they're focusing on the average, so that they're trying to get the average blue-collar worker, the black blue-collar worker, angry at his blue-collar white peer, who is not making any more money than him, is in the same boat, living paycheck to paycheck. But they are terrified of these workers finally coming together and looking at the common enemy. Wait a minute, you've got us fighting with each other. This is divide and conquer, but apparently we're way beyond that because they have everybody distracted. Everybody's paying attention now to nothing but race. Nobody's doing the content of the character like Martin Luther King advised. It's all by the color of the skin. John F. Kennedy said race has no place in American life or law. Is there anything more untrue about present day in America than that? I mean, race dictates everything, and it's just a shame. And to still be talking about this, it irritates me because there's so many more things to talk about. But unfortunately, it's front and center now, and you have to address it. And if we don't, I don't know what's going to happen. But I can't parody anything. I can't spoof anything. I don't know how the Onion spoofs anything, but it would not shock me if you suddenly heard that some representative is introducing a bill to allow the black people to pick a slave for a week or something and enslave a white person. It would not surprise me at all. And I know that's hard to believe, but that's how absurd this. They're pushing and pushing and pushing. There's no resistance. No one's blowing back. The Republicans are as bad as the Democrats are. They're sitting in there and they're pledging allegiance to Black Lives Matters, and
our whole political system is rotted to the core. All right, we know that.
Absolutely. And there's just nobody. And the only opposition to it is this big doofus, this big orange doofus in the Oval Office that is just tweeting. And that's it. I mean, there's no other opposition. All the other Republicans are silent. The police chiefs are still largely standing down. I saw the police chief of out there in Seattle who was almost crying on the air. It's a black woman, where about the 2 murders that happened. It was like you would think she would think she was just a housewife. It's like, you're the police chief.
The most talk about a lack of leadership. Oh my! I'm just watching this with my jaw almost hanging down. I know what's going on. I think all of you understand what's we generally, this audience, our family, we all get the big picture. Donald gets it. We get it. And it's so frustrating when you run into people who are otherwise intelligent who don't, and they won't hear you. Hold on just a minute. We'll come right back. Hang on. Okay. All right. Just finishing up. I want to thank Bruce for sending this in. Thank you, Bruce. I'm sending you a thank you note. He sent me the Tucker Carlson piece on that. Again, I just cannot watch every night. I wish I could. I put as many as I can up there. In fact, I put Tucker up as a columnist on the left side. And you can find some of his most current pieces that are all worth looking at. He talks about, in this video, about the book, White. Oh, you got White Fragility. This is no accident. This book didn't just happen to be published and given a huge send-off and launch. Didn't just happen. This is a weaponized effort, again, to damage European Americans who came over here from many countries and built this country. European Americans. Quit calling them whites. They're European Americans, huh? We call them African Americans, don't we? We call them blacks too, but let's at least spread it around a little evenly. I'm going to play just a little bit of this, if that's okay, Donald. I think it's important that people hear this. And again, bravo to Tucker. I hope they don't bounce him off. The pressure obviously is there. He is a token patriot, the token patriot. So here we go. Hang on.
The best-selling book in America last week wasn't anything by J.K. Rowling. It was a tract called White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. It's a hit, and not a small hit. White Fragility has sold so many copies that the paperback edition is out of stock on Amazon. Schools and companies across the country are ordering it in bulk. Deloitte is pushing it, so is NBC and Harvard Business School. The CEO of American Airlines was recently photographed reading the book. This fall, White Fragility is likely to be required reading at your children's school. You may soon be told to study it on a corporate retreat, so it's worth knowing what it is. What's it about exactly? We read the book, and we'll sum it up for you in 4 words. White people are racist. Not just racist white people, all white people, whether they're 6 years old or 100 years old. All of them are by definition racist.
And what does that mean to the average Black Lives Matter imbecile, moron, whatever color? It means whites should be removed. Okay? That's what it means. Racism, got to kill it off. It's the only way to deal with it. They're not even talking about re-education camps. They're talking about guillotines. There was a guillotine, however you want to pronounce it, placed in front of Jeff Bezos' house today, as I mentioned earlier tonight. They want all wealthy and whites dead. Here we go.
They're racist because they are white. Only white people are racist. No one else is. Robin DiAngelo tells people this for a living. She's a professional anti-racist educator. She shuttles between schools and boardrooms telling people that their DNA make them evil. She makes big money doing this. Last year, for example, the University of Kentucky, a publicly funded university, paid DiAngelo $12,000 for 2 hours of this message. The school could have used that money to give poor black kids an education, but instead, they handed the cash, that's more than a third of what the average American makes in a year, to a not very bright white lady to tell them they're racists.
Because most whites are not racist in the traditional sense. They're not. They recognize the difference in races. All races are not the same. That's not racism, though. This woman is dangerous. This is another op. It's a massive psyop. White fragility is basically calling for the elimination of whites. That's what it is.
Yeah, and
Robin
again,
DiAngelo has a very good.
Go ahead, Jeff.
No, and again, this is a white woman that is doing this, and I just
she's a communist.
Yeah,
she's a communist. Another Marxist.
This is it's such a disastrous way of thinking, because how do you have a civilization? Much as as Langston Hughes said back in the early 1900s, that this separate but equal 100 years of Jim Crow was a dream deferred, and it was going to explode, and it did explode. You can't have a separate but equal society, and this is kind of a different kind of separate equal. But basically, you can't say that race doesn't matter. Race is a social construct, except for whites, and they are so evil that you must not even talk about being white unless you're apologizing.
Telling you, this is a move toward the French Revolution again. That's where it's headed. Watch and see.
It's
all right,
all
here we
racial.
go. Oh, yeah.
Of course, Robin DiAngelo has a very good gig. Of course, not everyone likes her message. Telling people they're racists is fine if they actually are racist. But what if they're not racists? And most people in this country are not. Well, let's see. How would you like it if someone called you a child molester or a wife beater? You probably wouldn't like it very much. In fact, you could lose your job for that. You could lose your friends. You could even lose your family. You might feel pretty threatened by that accusation. Aha! Says Robin DiAngelo. That means you're guilty of racism. Feeling threatened is definitive proof that you're a racist. You're defensive. You've got white fragility, hence the title of the book. By the way, if you're not threatened when someone publicly denounces you as racist, that is also proof that you're a racist. Either way, my friend, you are a racist. Logic is clearly not Robin DiAngelo's specialty. Neither is literate writing or clear thinking. She is a complete and total idiot. That's one thing you learn by the end of her book. And yet our leaders treat Robin DiAngelo with great respect. They think she's a genius. That tells you everything about them and also the moment we're living in. The dumbest people suddenly have the most power. In the book, DiAngelo goes on to make a number of other ridiculously false claims, laughably false. Some of them are so obviously the opposite of what is actually true, you've got to imagine she was grinning as she typed the manuscript. Will they believe this? Yes. In America, DiAngelo writes, quote, "We are socially penalized for challenging racism." Really? Where and how? The country the rest of us live in, the United States of America, hates racism. Hating racism is effectively our national religion. Every organization we have is organized to stamp it out. Commit racism and the FBI shows up. Come on, it's just too absurd to be real. But Robin DiAngelo isn't really trying to convince anyone. The real point of her book is to defeat and demoralize you. DiAngelo claims that everything you really want, everything that people of every color really want in every society in the world, is a sign of white racism. You want to live in a safe neighborhood? You're racist for that. You want to send your kids to a decent school? You're a racist for that. All of your dreams are racism. And the only way to atone for this racism is to give up those dreams, to abandon your aspirations and make sure that your family lives a much worse life. For white people, DiAngelo writes, quote, "Discomfort is necessary and important." Needless to say, DiAngelo does not address the millions of white people in this country who already live in perpetual discomfort because they are impoverished. She doesn't mention the entire counties in rural America where virtually no adult man has a full-time job, where there are no dentists because no one can afford to go to the dentist. Robin DiAngelo has never met people like that. No doubt she would hate them if she did. Instead, DiAngelo's book is effectively addressed to entitled urban professionals as silly and frivolous and self-loathing as she is her friends. In DiAngelo's world, economics play no role in anything. They don't matter. Everyone she knows has a high-status job and a secure job. They're not worried about unemployment. They don't care about income inequality. They're on the right side of it. These aren't problems for them. Remember, DiAngelo herself gets paid $6,000 an hour to talk. She's not concerned about paying the rent. And in fact, DiAngelo explains at one point, worrying about economic injustice is just another symptom of, brace yourself here, racism, of white fragility. Get it? Maybe you're starting to understand why corporate America absolutely loves this book. Why? because Robin DiAngelo absolves them of their crimes. Apple and the health insurers and the credit card companies get off scot-free because the real problem, Robin DiAngelo tells them, is white racism. And what a relief that is for them to learn. $6,000 an hour is a small indulgence to pay for that kind of forgiveness. Thank you, Reverend DiAngelo. We appreciate the house call. In sum, White Fragility is an utterly ridiculous book. Its ironies are so profound they make your head spin. A book about racism that is far more aggressively racist than anything Louis Farrakhan has ever written. A book that claims to side with black people but instead patronizes them and demeans them like they're children. A book about systemic injustice that is in fact itself a sly defense of the very people perpetuating the worst injustices in our society. Everything about White Fragility is poisonous garbage, and that's not an overstatement. And that will be obvious to you the second your kids bring it home from school, or the moment the corporate HR director in your office lays a copy of it on your desk. And you should say so when that happens. Don't be passive. Speak up loudly. It is your right to disagree with Robin DiAngelo. What she says is wrong, it's crazy, it's destructive, and it foments hatred. We are Americans. We're allowed to do that. The second we are forced to accept the premises of White Fragility, we won't be Americans.
Okay, just extraordinarily well summed up and presented. There's no question that South Africa is the model that the black communist Bolsheviks and their white dupes would like to see here. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand the big picture. You turn the reins of power over to those who are ill-equipped, inequipped, and not qualified to handle, and you will have a third world South Africa right here real quick. And you remember some of the Black Lives Matter communists were calling for, I think it was the woman who founded it, calling for whites who own homes to give their homes to black people. Give their homes to black people. Because 400 years ago, Zionist Jews created the slave trade to the New World. How many blacks who are activists in this field have you heard, Donald, mention one Jewish slave trader who got this whole thing started and made billions in dollars back in the day doing it?
Well, they're not mentioning anybody powerful. This is directed, again, at the average white person. 80% of Americans of all colors live paycheck to paycheck, have less than $500 in the bank, and that's going to grow now. God knows what the figure it is after this pandemic and the nationwide protests and the shutdowns. Who knows what it is? I mean, the figure might be 90% at this point. But what's, for people like, again, I was raised a liberal Democrat. I loved to listen to speeches of Martin Luther King when I was young. JFK is my hero. What's going on now is the antithesis. It's kind of an anti-civil rights movement. And what is we're going backwards. The idea of the civil rights movement was because certain people had been excluded from mainstream America. There was an apartheid, separate but equal. So they wanted to, they should be able to eat in restaurants. They should be able to frequent the same establishments we do. They need to have their full voting, eliminate poll taxes and things like that to prevent them from voting. So people of good conscience at that time supported that, obviously, and that's what liberals did then. They wanted to increase people, as much as in the 1920s, they supported giving women the right to vote. That kind of thing. You wanted to extend rights. This is infringing upon the rights of another group of white people, and it's preaching not integration. Martin Luther King would be astonished if he came back today, because his entire message was integration, people living together, my children playing with white children, and being judged by the content of their character. The Black Lives Matter in these groups are preaching, and they had a segregated area in Seattle and the CHOP and all that. They're preaching segregation. They don't want to be integrated into society. Instead, they're just chanting racist this, racist that. And it gets, how long are we going to sit here and listen to this nonsense what kind of systemic racism is being run by, I don't know where the systemic racism is, because every single large corporation in this country vocally and publicly supports Black Lives Matter and this cause. Every single media outlet, virtually every celebrity, the entire sports world, every single powerful organ in our society almost has to say they're behind Black Lives Matter. We support the black community. So if those organs, if the New York Times and Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, if they aren't white supremacists, where are the white supremacists? If they don't have privilege, who does? So this is like being driven where the people who, if such a thing as white supremacy exists, that's where you would find it, in the boardrooms of those big corporations and the top levels of government. But the Black Lives Matter and Antifa is not directing their ire at those people because they're being funded largely by them. Instead, they're looking at you, Mr. and Mrs. Mainstream America, what's left of the middle class, because they're trying to destroy that. And they want to keep people at their throats. They want to keep them fighting. They want to keep them divided. While meanwhile, they continue to rape and plunder. And God knows what they're going to do with the economy after they get through with all this, or if they're going to shut us down again. And so I read today that 47% of Americans are out of work. We have almost a 50% unemployment rate when looked at correctly. That's now. So imagine what that's going to be if we shut down again. Those are the issues that people
if
should
we
be
shut down
about.
again, they'll just bury it. What's left, it'll be dead. We're not going to get through this. If we allow that to happen, we're dead.
I think we will, and I think at this point, the shutdown thing is built around that cultural divide. The same that now is exploding, but it's the same kind of thing you heard Pat Buchanan talk about in 1988. And now, I mean, already in 1988, clearly the cultural war had been lost. Because you remember, he encountered tons of controversy then. So imagine today he might be assassinated on the spot or something, and people would be cheered if he attempted to make that same speech today. It's not allowed. The cultural war that Pat Buchanan talked about was probably lost then. It's certainly been long lost now. And people to talk about a civil war coming up, to have a war, you have to have two opposing forces. And there's only one side fighting. There is no other side. No one is fighting back. And that includes our authorities, our officials. And I don't know where, we talked about all the, and I don't want this to happen, but much as with the lockdown, they talked about all the people, once those people aren't going to stand for it, all the gun people, the Second Amendment people. I don't see the Second Amendment people anywhere. I don't see them. Apparently, this, as long as they leave them alone in their homes with their guns, all these things are fine. But I don't see anybody going out. I don't see where are all the Civil War reenactment, the people that, there's some people that play these games, a huge industry out there, Civil War reenactors. Where are they? Why aren't they showing up at these monuments and mass and saying, hey, we can't do that? I don't see anybody doing it. And it's very sad because it looks like one side has been beaten into submission. I don't know if it's still the majority or not. And the other side is just doing whatever they want. And I don't know what the end game is here. I don't know what the end game is for the lockdown nonsense. I don't know if we're just, be required to wear masks forever again, and people are just going to have masks all the time now, and you're going to have to social distance, and maybe young people will never be able to have a courtship anymore. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I don't know what the end game is for these protests as well, because we're at the point now where this single issue, this racist nonsense
plays a part.
Go ahead.
It drives everything now. So whenever I bring up any part of history, it doesn't matter what it is. I get people, jumping all over me about. They'll relate whatever it is, from the founding fathers, to the Civil War, to Woodrow Wilson. Today was called a racist because he showed Birth of the Nation in the White House. So I mean, it's everything.
Look, we're being played so badly. I'm embarrassed that white people, and there are many, bless them all, many of other colors, Latinos even some. I've seen a couple. A lot of blacks are rejecting all this BLM crap. Whites are afraid to. They need to stand up. They must stand up. Look, here, listen. Morgan Freeman, the great American actor, a patriot, the rock rapper superstar Lil Wayne, Denzel Washington. Listen to some of this stuff. Just real quick here. This is what has to happen. Blacks have to literally stand up and encourage whites to stand up. They're so damn afraid now.
Yes.
Think about the reversal that is. It's weird. All right, here's Denzel and the rest of them. Let's listen to Morgan first.
Do you think that race plays a part in wealth distribution, or either a mindset that you can't?
Today?
Yeah.
No.
You don't?
No, I don't. No. You and I, we're proof. Why would race have anything to do with it? Put your mind to what you want to do and go for that. It's kind of like religion to me. It's a good excuse for not getting there.
Where are we in the United States of America
Lil Wayne
in race relations and what you see from day to day in your life?
Skip, they wouldn't want to ask me that. They wouldn't want my answer to represent it because God knows I have been nothing but blessed. My whole path, these 33 years have been nothing but a blessing. I have never, never is a strong word, I've never dealt with racism, and I'm glad I didn't have to.
Okay, there's another. Let me find another one here. Here's back to Morgan.
Of racism, stop talking about it.
Okay, let me back it up. I stepped on it. Mike Wallace is interviewing Morgan Freeman.
How are we going to get rid of racism until... Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man. Yeah. And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man.
You know, it's frustrating to me that people take race and they make it personal. You know what I mean? Like we're at a loss in this generation. If you look at it in the 80s, Archie Bunker was a stark racist. Stark. If you don't know who Archie Bunker is, look him up. All in the Family, great show.
You heard him.
The Jeffersons, stark racist. Fred Sanford, stark racist. But you know what black people and white people did? They laughed. You watch 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte. Both of them hated each other because he was black and because he was white. You know what they did? They laughed.
But I asked you what the racial breakdown was of your audience. Do you remember this? You told me the only black face you could see in the whole audience was your makeup artist. I believe that's what you said. She was in the front row, right? A lot of white kids love rap.
Yes.
Explain that. What does that say to you? What's the message of it? What's the bigger picture of it?
I don't want to be bashed because I don't want to sound like I'm on the wrong if there is a side, but I thought that was clearly a message that there was no such thing as racism. That's what I thought that was.
You know,
All right, one more from Morgan Freeman.
And it's probably getting me in trouble, but I said to some of my colleagues recently, so I know that it's an issue, but it seems like every single day on television I'm talking about race, and it's because of the news cycle, it's in the news, but sometimes I get so tired of talking about it. I want to just go, this is over, can we move on?
And if you talk about it, it exists.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like it exists and we refuse to talk about it, but making it a bigger issue than it needs to be is the problem we have.
Mm-hmm. There you go. See? Stop talking about it. It'll go away. This has just been politicized, weaponized, and it's being used against all of us of all colors who care about America and what all of us together have built here over the 4 centuries that we've all been here. Let's get honest about this. Stop being used by these Marxist scum who are liars, frauds, and financed with international money who want to take this wonderful thing down that we have all of us built.
Right. Yeah, we just have white people have to just. I mean, again, they just have to summon up some kind of courage and stop acting like a bunch of steppin' fetchits, because that's what our white leaders are doing. They're really they're embarrassing.
They're
They're a bunch of
groveling.
Aunt Jemimas and steppin' fetchits. It's ridiculous. Stand up. Have some backbone. Because the way you act, the way a lot of these leaders act, they look like maybe they are closet racists and they're running away to a KKK meeting. That's the way they look. I mean, you've all seen people that look guilty. They act suspicious and people think, well, they did something. That's the way all our leaders do. I mean, they stutter and they still make stupid things like some of my best friends are black, or they try to say some hip black expression and blacks laugh. Black people, I worked around hundreds of blacks when I was a blue collar worker. They laugh. Blacks laugh at that. White people
you know what?
Let's come together.
Oh yeah, when they're laughing, they just got the greatest laugh gift of ever. The video of those white police officers washing the feet of black marching and protest leaders. They are going to howl about that for as long as they live. This is not what this country is about. It is utterly derogatory toward the wondrous things that we all built together. No, everything wasn't always equal, but it could have been and should have been far better than it is now. But it was hijacked and turned against the very people, the good people of all colors, who wanted a better life. This is wrong. It's got to stop. Morgan Freeman, right on the money. Lil Wayne, right on the money. Donald, Jeffries, always right on the money. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, good night.
Take care.
All right, you bet. We'll be right back. Think about that. Damn, it's disgusting to watch something so important be weaponized and turned against this country. And I'm talking about all good members of this country.